Welcome to another episode of On VJ's playlist. And today I'm joined by Shivang Arora, a young singer-songwriter, producer, and let me just say someone with a lot of arrows in his quiver. Hi Shivang, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very well. Shivang, before we get started, I really want to know the mystery, or should I say, where you get such a deep, ruminating voice from? Because the little chat that we had prior to starting this interview, um, I I think our viewers need to understand, where does Shivang get this voice from? Is this something that has been inherent, or do you just it's an add-on of sorts?
Yeah, it's just been there like that. I mean, my dad also has a similar voice, and yeah, it's been like that.
My God, it's like I can already predict that we are going to talk about deeply ruminating and deeply intellectual books and all with that voice of yours. You sound like you will sit in a community space, in a close-knit community space with ardent listeners and followers of good music and poetry, and you'll just start talking about life and love amongst them. But small talk aside, Shivang, I think we have gathered here to talk about your latest single, It's Dark. uh, the name itself fully sounds, something that's very contemplative, something that sounds very, very, to a certain extent, I would also say something that takes you to a space which uh, can be uncomfortable also. So, do you want to quickly tell us about what is It's Dark about?
Yeah, it's kind of about what I was feeling when I wrote it. It was a kind of an uncomfortable space, and it's also kind of influenced by what I was listening to at that time. I was getting into a lot of music by Nirvana and a lot of progressive rock bands, and they tend to be a bit on the serious and contemplative side.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just like for people to kind of decipher their own meanings to it and add their own stories to it.
Fair enough. Let's begin from the beginning. How did you take to music as a young kid? When did that first inkling or that first uh, germ kind of catch up with you?
I think it started in school. I was in one of these vocal classes in school, and my music teacher kind of noticed that I have a thing for it and I have a good voice, and then he selected me in the school choir. And then suddenly I was this guy who was performing at every school function, playing the guitar and singing along. So that's where it all started.
And how were you as a as a young kid in school? Were you awkward? Were you outgoing and social with your peers? What did you exactly do to gauge the attention of your music teacher?
So, uh, if when it comes to the attention from my music teacher, that was like one of those. We had these vocal classes that everyone used to attend,
Yeah.
and everyone just used to randomly sing in it, no matter how they sound. So that's where he caught my attention. It was not like me putting myself out there; it was just him discovering me. And about the school situation, I was that nerd guy who was into studies and all, and just occasionally participating in these functions and showcasing my talent. I was kind of yeah, I was well with my friends, but I had this really small kind of social circle. I didn't mix up with everyone, but the ones that I had close to me were really close.
That sounds very relatable. From what I understand, Shivang, your music is largely, like you said, is influenced by the likes of Nirvana. I believe you also love listening to John Mayer, Steven Wilson, and Pink Floyd. So how did you first discover about these artists? I mean, did you listen to them from the internet, or were you introduced to CDs and cassettes? I mean, and how much of your immediate surroundings? And when I say immediate surroundings, I mean your parents and peers. Uh, what kind of music did you actually take up to as a kid?
So as a kid, I was mostly into Bollywood and whatever was mainstream and pop at that time. I'm not one of those guys who grew up to this music. It all started when I went to college. My college roommates and peers and all, they were into this classic rock and a Pink Floyd kind of thing. So they were the ones who introduced me to this music, and immediately kind of fell for it, let's say. It was like so good because I had not heard anything like that before, and it kind of blew my mind that okay, music can be this vast. So that's where it started.
I believe you're also a student at A.R. Rahman's KM College of Music and Technology, which is based in Chennai. So, from a young lad based in Delhi, how did you reach Chennai?
So when I was in 12th, I kind of figured out that music is what I want to do full time. So I was
Mhm.
already looking into colleges and a formal music education because I wasn't formally trained before. And audio engineering was something that really sparked my interest. So I just chose to learn from the best.
When you say that you weren't formally trained, so are you saying that it's once you joined college, once you joined this particular institute, is when you started obtaining formal training, when you started working upon your vocals and also learning the technicalities about music making?
Yes, exactly. Before that, I was mostly self-trained, even when it comes to vocals and guitar.
Okay.
So in college, I joined this Western vocal course as well. And that's when I kind of got into the whole technique of singing, and I, realized that there's much more to my voice than I know.
So when you were, self-training yourself prior to joining college, what were the different techniques you adopted? How did you make yourself aware to, the knowledge that's, available at your disposal?
I didn't really know much when I was self-training. I just sang what felt good to me. And when it comes to guitar, I just used to look up these chords of any song that I liked and just, played it.
Right. Since you rightly spoke about A.R. Rahman and mentioned that how he is the best, and rightfully, I mean, there are no two ways about that. Let's talk about his music because as a generation, it's been 3 decades to the man since he first made music, back in, I think, in the early 90s. I think it just this year, I think he's completed about 3 decades. So if we can talk about some of his songs that have made a profound impact on you as a listener and something that you take a huge influence from. So, which are some of the songs from A.R. Rahman's discography that you really hold dear to yourself?
I think there's this song from the album Tal called Nahi Samne. That has to be one
Oh,
of my favorite A.R. Rahman songs because the whole soundscape and the way it's performed and the beautiful details in it, they are just amazing.
which, by the way, is a very unusual song to pick, and I must appreciate you for your good choice, Shivang, because it's very obvious for people to pick up like what's already hyped about, or what is already thrown into our faces a couple of times.
Yeah.
Although they are absolutely amazing songs to listen to, but Nahi Samne, yeah, I think you rightfully picked what I could say close can come a very it's a very close reflection of how you feel as a listener and the kind of music that you try to make. About your fabulous EP, Yeh Pal, something which I have personally liked this year, and I think it is going to make into my list of personal favorites from the year, which I have really enjoyed listening to. So, Shivang, for those who still aren't aware about what Yeh Pal is about, what is the quick thing that you would like to tell them?
So I'm really glad that you liked it. Yepal is mostly about how we kind of look at different emotions in our life and how we kind of uh, learn to be in the moment instead of overthinking about some stuff. So it's kind of a very philosophical EP, but it mostly revolves around romantic emotions. So that's the gist of it. It has a soft rock kind of vibe to it. It
Yeah.
has some guitar solos and it's kind of refreshing in a way.
I believe, the beauty of this EP is that so much of it, it has, has been, kind of self-done. It's all
Yeah,
done by yourself, whether it's, the vocals, the way it's been produced, the mixing and mastering of it. It's all done by yourself. Um,
yeah.
so was it largely because a budget constraints? Was that the concern, or was it also a challenge to yourself that okay, you wanted to take, what you want to bite more than you can chew? So why did you lend so much of the responsibility behind making this AP all by yourself?
I think that's kind of what I've evolved myself into. That's what my creative process is like. Because it's not just this EP, I do that for all of my music. So everything is produced by me, performed and mixed mastered by me. I do occasionally have some live drums in there. So for It's Dark, for example, the drums were played by Raghav. So I kind of just feel like home with this process because there's a lot of my creative insights that go into production as well, and also mixing and mastering. So I like to do it all myself.
So when you're not making music, Shivang, in your spare time, how do you look about, references? How do you look about different influences and, what people in your scene are doing? What do you proactively seek out as a listener?
As a listener, all I seek out for is meaning.
Okay.
I don't like when people just throw a bunch of stuff together and call it art or whatever. I mean, I, personally, I mean that's just my opinion. I kind of
And
seek for
I
meaning
can
in
tell
art.
you, your personal opinion is something that will resonate with a lot of us out there who actually are looking for music. And like you rightfully said, a lot of things that are now thrown onto our faces are just a bunch of elements put together and called as music. So I totally get where you're coming from. But yeah,
Yeah,
you were saying further.
yeah. I think that's happening with digital artworks as well. People are getting into AI and all. That's like a whole different debate now. People are also working on AI music production and how production can be a push of a button for someone. So I kind of personally don't like where it is going because I think that for any artwork, there's meaning and then there's personality involved.
Yeah, yeah.
So the artwork has to have some personality and some imperfection, some human element to it to have a meaning.
Rightfully said, Shivang, actually. Why just AI? Do you think, musicians and artists in general have just, started, I won't say adapting as such, but it's like they've just fallen prey to trends. Like trends has dictated so much, or rather should not has dictated. I would say trends are now dictating so much about how music is being made, about how processes are formed by artists at large on how to do what they do. I mean, so much of creativity is being kind of dictated upon by trends. Do you think we are really heading in the right direction?
Glad that you brought that up. I've been having that mental debate with myself for a long time now, and the conclusion that I've come to is that it's kind of attractive to see what trends can do for people,
Hmm.
for certain kind of people who want to be those influencers with a huge following, and it kind of looks attractive that okay, you can just go on living your life and have a living off of that instead of a regular 9 to 5 or something like that. And when it comes to musicians, yeah, it does seem like okay, we have to hop on to the trends and do what the whole world is doing to be heard. But I also feel that there are a lot of niche artists who have a small following, but those followers are so connected with them as people and as musicians that
Yeah.
they'll go all the way to support them. So I think that for artists, that's more important instead of just hopping onto trends blindly. I think it should be about, even if you're hopping onto trends, it should be about what you're bringing to it, what's your personality in there,
Yeah.
instead of just copying others.
But do you think there's a flip side to it, Shivam? Because on the other hand, your following can only be or your following or your reach can only be gauged basis on the numbers you draw, basis on the on the footfalls that you bring. And unfortunately, the paraphernalia or just the superficial view of it is what so many people are interested in. I mean, especially those who are not really concerned about the art that the artist brings. It's about the numbers that the artist draws. Do you
Yeah,
think that's also the other perspective that one must consider before really and do you think that's a perspective that we can consider to a huge extent?
definitely, definitely. I think that's what most brands look for when they're collaborating with people online. They
Hmm.
look for the numbers, and I think that public attention is something that's really being monetized right now.
Right.
And that's what it comes down to for people who are trying to make money off of these social platforms. So yeah, that's definitely a very big factor when it comes to overall reach and everything involved with it.
Not many people know Shivang, but you're also the founder of the Indian Indie Music Guild, which I believe is one of the first music communities that has been designed and built to nurture emerging indie talents across the country. And you're one of the founding members of it. You're someone who actively seeks about wanting to give back to the community. So, do you want to tell our viewers more about that as to why was it started? And how do you actively go about contributing towards it?
So Indian Indie Music Guild is India's first Web3 music community for artists. I've been researching the Web3 and NFT space since 2020 when I was in college, and I kind of saw a lot of potential in it because uh, people all over the world are really kind of harnessing that power and the technology that the NFT world brings to them. And I didn't see most of Indian indie artists doing that, so that's kind of how we started. But then we saw that okay, artists maybe need a lot more help than that, because I keep getting a lot of DMs from artists who are just starting out. They kind of want to ask me about how do you pitch to Spotify, for example, how do you pitch to magazines and publications and stuff. So I think that there's a huge lack of general awareness in upcoming
Hmm.
indie artists about these aspects as well. They don't even know that they should be distributing at least a month before the release date. They kind of distribute a week before and expect some results. So I think that this kind of an awareness needs to be actively given out to emerging artists. So that's kind of where we digress towards when building this community.
Well, we're speaking about community, and as a firm believer of community and the feeling of togetherness and belonging, if I have to ask, who do you love listening to from the Indian independent music scene in your, at leisure?
So in the Indian scene, Ankur Tiwari has been a major influence on me. I really love his songwriting and everything about his music. And I listen to Lifafa. I listen to his band Peter Cat Recording Co.
Yep.
I listen to a lot of Indian rock acts like As We Keep Searching, The Local Train, Raman Negi solo work as well. I think it's really brilliant. And yeah, in the indie scene as well, I'm mostly inclined towards indie rock and these niche genres. Bloodywood.
Lastly, Shivang, if I may have to ask you, I mean, the year is almost over. So if we are looking at 2023 now, what are the big plans for yourself?
So I've been working on an album.
Okay.
So that's what I'd want to do in the next year. I want to work on an album. I want to complete it and look into the marketing and whole releasing aspect of it. And there are also two other EPs that I'd want to finish in the next year. But mostly it's gonna be I'm probably gonna be sitting back and working on my craft, making sure that it's up to the mark, and yeah, just working on my skills.
Since you spoke about your plans also, Shivang, I think what I have experienced this year, or rather, what I have, noticed with artists is that plans are made at the start of the year, but then they take their time to kind of execute it and kind of bring them to fruition. There's I believe a lot of artists have just chased this quest for perfection, this quest for wanting to have a better product, not knowing that sometimes the just a half finished or or maybe just a raw version of what they're working on is pretty good enough. Do you think the quest for perfection is something that while it may prove to be great, but it can also have it can be detrimental?
Yeah, definitely. I think that perfection is really not something that anyone can achieve, anyway. So, but it's also really important to kind of work on your craft and make sure that you are satisfied with what you're putting out.
Right.
Because if I look at some of my old music, I would
Hmm.
not be satisfied with it right now. So I just want to make sure that I put out my best and work on myself as a musician. I think that's really important. But when it comes to releasing a final product, I think it's better to leave some imperfections in there if it sounds good instead of chasing the perfection.
To celebrating imperfections, then thank you so much, Shivang, for joining me today. And I wish you all the very best for all the wonderful music that you're about to bring us in 2023 and from there on. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me here.